the first time in nearly 40 years, Peugeot has brought us a small car that really pushes the boundaries in Super Mini design. This second generation 208 model's engineering may not quite be unique, but all the feel-good stuff really is. The pavement presence, the avant-garde cabin. Plus, that's been delivered with most of the practicality and efficiency you'll need from a small hatch. Here's a car that's made other brands in its sector really sit up and take notice. And we think quite a few buyers who'd never normally choose a Peugeot in this class are going to do the same.
What should a small French family car feel like to drive? Much like this, we think. Peugeot hasn't bothered trying to be sporty, firm and Germanic here, so the damping control is gentle and allows for a bit of chassis movement, but gets firmer when the body starts pitching about, as it will do if you start pushing this car into corners in the kind of way a typical owner never would. Predictably, the resulting confection doesn't give you the alert responses you get from a Fiesta or even in a Renault Clio, but for the kind of urban driving that cars of this sort tend to do, we think it's pretty well judged. What it lacks in handling finesse is well compensated for by the languid and properly Gallic way this car handles speed humps and tarmac tears. Peugeot wants you to pick a powertrain in the same way you'd select a trim option. In this case, the modularity of this car's sophisticated CMP platform allowing a three-way choice between petrol, diesel or full electric. Most will opt for the 1.2-litre 3-cylinder petrol PureTech turbo power plant that we're trying here in 100 horsepower form, a zingy, willing little unit that warbles pleasantly and is notably economic. In this form, with manual transmission, it manages up to 53.0 miles to the gallon on the WLTP combined cycle and up to 96 grams per kilometre of NEDC rated CO2. An 8-speed E80 auto gearbox is optional with the PureTech 100 engine, or mandatory if you want this power plant in its uprated 130 horsepower state of tune. The same engine comes in entry-level normally aspirated 75 horsepower form, or there's a minority interest 1.5-litre Blue HDI diesel. That's if you can't stretch to that all-electric E208 variant we mentioned earlier. This mates a 100 kilowatt electric motor putting out 136 brake horsepower with a 50 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery that, when fully charged, is capable of giving the E208 a WLTP rated driving range of up to 211 miles. Recharging takes 7.5 hours from a 7 kilowatt hour garage wall box. If you want this 208, it'll be because you think it looks like nothing else on the road, and you'll be right. The front end is probably the most immediately arresting part of the design, with these distinctive LED corner fangs that on GT line models flow up into the 3-claw LED headlight signature. Look further up and you'll note the pared back windscreen that allows space for this larger sculpted bonnet, the forward tip of which shows off the 208 badge. At the rear, the avant-garde theme continues with exact design and tautly drawn shaping. In profile, things are a touch more conventional, though if you're familiar with the previous generation model, you'll immediately notice this squared-off C-pillar and has these curious recessed indentations. And you might also note just how much larger and lower this current car is, with its wide wings and curvier body. Right, time to take a look inside. It certainly has a very futuristic feel, and one of very high perceived quality thanks to this two-tier fascia layout with its smart carbon-trimmed concave inner section that curls around the edge of the cabin and on into the doors. As with the previous 208, this cabin champions Peugeot's unique so-called iCockpit format, where you view the instrument binnacle over the upper rim of a tiny steering wheel, rather than conventionally through the wheel spokes. Here, though, the concept's been further developed with the addition of this 3D instrument binnacle display. This sees critical information, like speed and navigational instructions, projected in hologram form from the inner roof of the binnacle onto a piece of slanted perspex in the foreground. Other secondary stuff features on a screen set further back, and a button on the left of the steering wheel allows you to differently format the whole setup according to preference. More media technology sits to your left in the form of the usual centre dash touchscreen, normally 7 inches in size for 208 buyers, but optionally available in the larger 10-inch form we have here. Either way, the monitor includes plenty of functions. Too many, in fact, because you have to use this display to operate all the climate functions, which means switching out of whatever you're looking at every time you want to change temperature or fan speed. At least these 7 stylised piano-style keys below this monitor look rather nice, positioned in front of a row of touch-sensitive shortcut buttons just behind. The seats are reasonably comfortable, there's not much wrong with the ergonomics, there's a reasonable amount of cabin storage space, and there are plenty of media connectivity points. Plus, on most models, you get a wireless charging mat too, with its own neat lidded compartment. Time to take a look at the rear seat. Once inside, it's actually not too bad. There's certainly less room than there was in the previous generation 208, despite the fact that this Mark II model has a fractionally longer wheelbase length. But there's not much less space than you get in the back of a Fiesta, for instance, though that's not really saying much. Overall, larger adults probably wouldn't want to be spending too long here. But does that matter, given that for the majority of buyers, these rear seats will be used only occasionally for those above school age? Only you can decide. Finally, let's take a look in the boot, which is 311 litres in size, which is 26 litres more than was on offer in the previous generation model, and 19 litres bigger than the trunk of a Fiesta, but is a capacity figure that remains about average by class standards. It's quite a usable squarically sized space though, with 674mm of length and 1018mm of width between the wheel arches. In summary, trying to please too many people too much of the time is a surefire recipe for failure, or at the very least a distinctly compromised and forgettable end result. As Peugeot now knows, a bolder, more innovative brand these days, the kind of maker you'd need to be to create a little hatch as good as this one. In this 208, the company has finally bought us the Super Mini it was always capable of. A smart small car choice. In more ways than one.